One of the things about the DC animated shows of the 1990s that I always rave about is how the creative team took inspiration from the comic book source material, but weren't afraid to change things up. Case in point, the villains seen in Batman the Animated Series, like Mr. Freeze or Clayface, who bore very little similarity to their comic book counterparts. The same approach was taken with the villains of the follow-up show Superman the Animated Series, and I'd like to talk about another example of a classic Superman villain that was reimagined for the show. Let's talk about the Parasite. Like most villains in Superman's 80-plus year publication history, Parasite has been through a lot of changes. The original Parasite, Raymond Jensen, was a crooked scientist that accidentally exposed himself to harmful radioactive waste after he went looking for valuable items to steal. Though he only spent a moment looking at it, the radiation turned his skin purple and transformed him into an energy-sucking monster. When one of his colleagues came to his aid, Parasite instinctually drained his energy. Realizing what had happened, Raymond decided to use his newfound power to become one of the greatest criminals on Earth, and went around draining the energy of his co-workers. This Parasite didn't necessarily need to touch people to drain their energy, he just needed to be close enough to them to start sapping their strength. After a chance encounter with Superman, seriously, he just randomly flew by Parasite's window, Parasite realised that if he wanted true power, he'd have to drain it from Superman. Rather than just pouncing on him, Parasite attempted to do some homework. He followed the energy trail and started gently draining it and keeping an eye out for anyone that looked like they were going to faint. Now that he knew who Superman was, he attempted to drain all of Superman's energy. However, his eyes were bigger than his stomach, so to speak. Parasite bit off more than he could chew and ended up exploding because his body was still mortal and couldn't hold the colossal power of Superman. That wasn't the end for the Parasite. His atoms would be recombined by an alien explorer, who the Parasite would murder, and he turned up in multiple stories over the next 20 years. Perhaps the most famous story being the Superman and Spider-Man crossover, where Dr. Doom recruited him to aid in his wicked plot. Following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, in which most of DC's continuity was reset, there was no Parasite. At least until the omnipresent Darkseid decided that there needed to be one. Apparently Darkseid is unaffected by all the various crises and continuity resets, and he had memories of the original Parasite, even though technically he currently didn't exist at all, but this multiversal stuff makes my head hurt. Darkseid identified a lowly janitor, Rudy Jones, as the potential new Parasite, and implanted the idea that his employers were hiding the payroll inside of hazardous waste containers. Much like the original Parasite, Rudy exposed himself to transformative levels of radiation, and became the second Parasite. Although this time he was green, not purple. His first battle would be against Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, but he would go on to face Starman and eventually Superman. Every time he was defeated, the Parasite was handed over to Star Labs, who would try to treat him, but their treatments would simply alter him. At one point he was a pool of protoplasm, before he later turned purple. For all intents and purposes, there were very few differences between the Rudy Jones Parasite and the Raymond Jensen Parasite. They were both greedy little cretins that wanted to be big shots. The biggest change came in the 1990s when Lex Luthor altered Parasite to allow him to retain the memories and personalities of the people he absorbed. The first case of this was Dr. Torval Freeman, whose mind was so strong that he became the dominant personality within the Parasite. Despite these changes, the one thing that remained constant was his insatiable hunger for power. If it wasn't already quite clear, in the Parasite's then 30-year history, he didn't actually have very many significant stories. He was just a brightly coloured villain with a fun gimmick. And hardly significant. Certainly not up there with Lex Luthor and Brainiac. And that brings us to the Superman the Animated Series version of the Parasite. Star Labs janitor Rudy Jones found himself bathed in dangerous radioactive material after a robbery went wrong. Rudy had a gambling problem and, in order to clear his debts, he was instructed to help steal chemicals. When we meet Rudy, he's completely ineffective, clearly intimidated by his co-conspirator Marty. Rudy struggles to operate a forklift truck and manages to look guilty as hell. When confronted by security, Marty and Rudy make a break for it with what they already have, while Rudy rides in the back of the truck. The bumpiness of the road causes the containers to tip over, smothering Rudy. This transformation is very clearly painful for him, and the scene makes it clear that Marty and Rudy are not friends, as Marty abandons Rudy on the side of the road. As traumatic as this experience was for Rudy, he's no tragic figure by any means. Rudy Jones was a meek and impotent person, and his new form, which allows him to empower himself by touching other people and draining their energy, fills him with joy. At the same time, I think this whole situation is very sad. This happened to him because he kept gambling and placing bets, all in the hope that he'd hit the jackpot and find a way out of his boring, insignificant life. Although upon reflection, in a way, his dream did come true. While Rudy is thankful for his transformation, that doesn't mean he doesn't want revenge on Marty. It's important to note that he wants revenge on Marty for the things he did to him when he was Rudy, making him feel small, pushing him around and insulting him. Parasite is the literal personification of unwanted touching and how predators delight in the power they have over other people and forcing their will on them. Marty is all too easy a target for him, and Parasite delights in his newfound power. The allegorical nature of his power is made all the more obvious by how Parasite targets Superman. It's important to note that the power that Parasite gains from draining people is fleeting, and that his victims quickly regain consciousness. This means that Parasite has to get creative about securing his sources of power. Parasite has all the creepy Joseph Fritzl energy when he drains Superman and takes his unconscious body to the basement of Star Labs, where Rudy used to hide when he should have been working, keeping him alive to use as and when he sees fit. And this is so disturbing on multiple levels, and it's one of the things that makes him such a great villain. He's absolutely reprehensible, not to be admired in the slightest, and he makes us feel uncomfortable. It's disturbing to think that beneath the surface of these quiet, meek, nice guy types, there's potentially a disturbing predator waiting for the opportunity to come out. Superman defeats Parasite after Jimmy Olsen stumbles upon the creepy buffet dungeon, and Superman tricks Parasite into absorbing kryptonite. This wipes his mind, leaving him in a catatonic state. A recovered Parasite next appeared in the episode Two's a Crowd. Parasite was brought in to drain the memories of a catatonic former Star Labs scientist, Earl Garver, who had hidden a powerful bomb somewhere in Metropolis. Parasite agreed to this in order to get access to cable television in his cell, along with a large TV, reflecting how pedestrian his dreams and desires really are. When Parasite drains Garver, Garver's stronger personality takes over the meek Rudy. This is a nice take on the Torval Freeman storyline from the comics, although Garver is unrepentantly villainous. Garver changes his scheme to keeping the Parasite's body, claiming the money he demanded from the city, setting the bomb off, and keeping Superman alive somewhere to drain his powers whenever he needs a top-up. Although, when it becomes clear to Rudy that he will always remain a passenger within his own body, he fights back. So, although things didn't quite go to plan, Rudy resisted when it mattered, and was rewarded with his new television and unlimited cable package. The allegory for unwanted touching is made all the more obvious in the Parasite's final Estas appearance, the episode Double Dose. In this story, he teams up with Livewire, who breaks him out of prison, in an effort to take Superman down once and for all. Of course, the Parasite is entirely unreliable, and constantly tries to push boundaries with Livewire. She makes it clear she's not interested in him, despite his claims that he can control himself, and she electrocutes him whenever he tries to get too close. It's almost comical how the Parasite gets this perverted look in his eyes, and thinks he's being sly when he tries to creep up on her. He's only able to get the drop on her after he drains some of Superman's powers. The plan was that he would weaken Superman and then allow Livewire to finish him off. While he may have agreed to it, Parasite never had any intentions of allowing Livewire to kill off his favourite snack. And now that he had the powers of Superman again, he was going to drain her powers too, keeping his two victims locked away somewhere for him to use whenever he felt peckish. Which is just so gross. Once again, the Parasite's undoing would come because he failed to take on board the weaknesses of his prey. In this case, the sprinkler system causes his electricity powers to burn out, once again wiping his mind. The Parasite made a handful of appearances in the Superman Adventures comic books, and they are definitely worth reading. Arguably the best story was the time he drained the powers of Mr. Mxyzptlk, but they are inconsequential stories. We'd see the Parasite turn up in Justice League as part of Gorilla Grodd's secret society, a villainous counterpart to the Justice League consisting of the Shade, Giganta, Sinestro, Killer Frost, Clayface, and Grodd. He'd use his abilities to drain Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Flash, delivering them to Grodd. But ultimately, the Secret Society was no match for an in-sync Justice League. He'd later be seen defeating several Justice Leaguers on his own, before getting knocked out by Captain Marvel. In the final season of Justice League Unlimited, the Parasite is also seen in the background as a member of the new expanded Secret Society, itself a response to the expanded roster of the Justice League. But he doesn't play a significant role. He is seen as part of the forces that are loyal to Gorilla Grodd in the episode Alive, but is presumably killed when Darkseid is reborn and blows up their ship. Which was quite an undignified end for one of Superman's most repulsive foes. So, in conclusion, the two things that leap out at me about the Parasite are the fact that his whole gimmick can be interpreted as an allegory for non-consensual touching, and the fact that, beneath this incredible power, he's an unambitious, pedestrian little man who just wants simple gratification. He wants money, he wants to be feared, and he wants to be entertained. He has this idea of what it takes to be a powerful person, but it's completely wrong. Superman's strength comes not from his ability to punch through tanks, it comes from his compassion and his decency, and the Parasite is anything but decent. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my current channel members, who are all listed on the screen right now. Next time I'll be jumping back into the futuristic world of Neo Gotham to look at the winner of my recent Batman Beyond villain poll, the world's greatest assassin, Curare. Hope to see you then.